In the early morning shadow of the western peaks, a traveler rode north on the cold road. He'd heard tales of his kinsmen breaking with tradition, of them digging into forbidden ice and breaking ties with the locals. And so, the traveler had ended his long self-imposed exile, mounted his wolf, and trudged up the long road back home to investigate and to claim what was his. Meanwhile, in Horseshoe Village, our heroes finally had a plan. Wick, and more importantly, the Spear Tip, were probably trapped in the Frost Goblin cave. The party would go get them, but there were Wraiths in the way. Luckily, the Wraiths were allergic to sunlight, and the Orithnar, Orcish warriors of the Horseshoe Village, carried reflective shields. And so it was decided the party would collect shields and use them to create a mirror bridge. Quintus, early to rise, had already left and started his task as soon as it was given. He was out there trying to find and borrow shields from his Orcish friends, the Orithnar. While Quintus was busy with that task, Dave and Wades finished some dried goods, dropped a coin on the bar because they couldn't find Arnold, and pushed off. They would conclude their business with Father Brum, who had so rudely stolen their amulet on the previous night.
Wades, you and me, we're gonna do this. Kick down the door, I'll beat Brum's ass, we'll get the amulet, and get paid.
The door is open.
Wades and Dave entered cautiously.
Hello?
The floor had been dug away, and beneath it, there was just smooth ice covered in old carved sigils. It looked like the passages of Brum's religious texts. Some of the notes looked to have been recent.
Hey, can you read this? What's this say?
The spear. It seems like he's...
A drop of blood landed on Wade's brow with a pat.
Oh, that's from upstairs. Should we...
I'll get Quintus.
Quintus stood at the edge of Horseshoe Chasm, a stack of shields at his feet.
Is it time?
A thick cloud passed overhead.
We found something.
So did I.
He didn't turn back to look at Wades, but looked down at something else instead.
Here.
He gestured at the ground on the edge. Wades walked ahead and saw what Quintus was talking about. A set of unknown boot tracks pointing at the goblin caves down below.
Someone must have rappelled into the caves early this morning.
Quintus spun round and slammed Wades in the back with a knee, and as the Dragonborn went over the edge, action surged to toss the shields down after him. Wades pulled his crossbow and used it to blink past the shields, overhead Quintus, just in time for another devastating blow. Before Quintus could land a second, an arrow fletched in pink feathers twisted into the possessed Dragonborn's shoulder. A moment before a massive canine jaws clamped down on Quintus's leg. Wades, never one to miss an opportunity, plunged his dagger deep. And Quintus, bleeding out, ran for the cliff, tried to make a jump over the edge, and before he could, Wades managed to grab Quintus. The helpful stranger commanded his wolf to do the same, and they dragged Quintus's unconscious body back over the precipice. They saw the shape of a wraith appear and evaporate in the sun. Wades looked back.
What?
Oh. Okay, so that took 3 weeks to animate, and I initially I wasn't even trying to animate, but then I just kind of, I was learning new software, and I just started going a little bit too far, and I got excited by the features, and I started to realize that you could put footprints in snow dynamically, and look at this, I can make shadows hit stuff. Oh, what happens if I do a walk cycle? Can I get dynamic cloth to work over a 2D character? Sort of not. I accidentally modeled stuff. Like I was just trying to do projection mapping, and then I modeled a whole fucking tavern. That's time I'm not going to get back, but it doesn't matter because we're moving forward. We're going to do the normal cold road. Anyways, a lot of you stop watching at some point and just start listening, right? So maybe this is that point, Wades looked back.
Oh, God.
The Frost Goblin was standing right there. He pointed an arrow at himself and exclaimed. Wades got into a defensive position, half expecting to be attacked by the Frost Goblin. But then the goblin just stared at him for a while, and Wades realized that the goblin was the owner of the wolf, and the owner of the arrow, and his savior.
Wait, why did you help?
Well, I had no help.
Waits explained in the nicest possible terms that he was under the impression that all frost goblins were lunatics. Poke explained that until recently, that wasn't the case. That he'd returned after hearing distressing stories of his clan.
So, Poke, come check. Maybe kill Drop Knuckles.
Drop Knuckles?
Fake shaman, fake king, stupid face.
Poke offered to accompany Wades in the hopes of having assistance when checking out the Goblin Cave. Wades accepted, and they made their way back to Father Brum's house, where Skittles, on orders from Dave, was guarding the entrance.
Ah, he's on a wolf. Watch out.
What? Hold.
Skittles shot off a bolt and it pegged Poke in the side of his neck. Poke hit the ground with a dull thud and rolled into a shooting position. As his pink-fletched arrow tore through Skittles' shoulder, Bite grabbed a peg leg and tore it loose.
Stop. He's with us.
Poke sprung up into an aimed crouch. Skittles returned the growl, but it was cut off by the sound of a very real growl next to his ear.
Never mind.
Wades explained that Skittles had been assaulted by Poke's kin and had lost his legs. Poke explained that if Skittles, who Poke affectionately named Shitmouth, ever attacked him or his wolf again, Poke would take more than his legs. And so finally, at peace, the newly formed Fellowship of Disgruntled Marksmen entered Father Brum's, just in time to see Dave leaning down the stairs, suppressing violent nausea.
That is one of the worst things I've ever... Oh, a frost goblin. Get him!
Dave pulled loose a mace crackling with arcane energy and retched.
Oh no.
He dropped it down the stairs.
He's with us. Dave, what did you find?
A body.
Wades, impatient and annoyed, pushed through.
I've seen a dead body before, Dave. Oh.
Every surface of the sheets, bedpost, and what was left of Brum's body was split open by nearly countless shallow cuts, all clearly made by the same kind of implement, small blade or blades. In a few places, the flesh was pinched in mounds as though cut by opposed edges, possibly scissors or simultaneous attacks. Wades carefully leaned over the body to search for the amulet, and it twitched.
Oh, fuck.
He jumped back. They both stood, weapons drawn. After a moment, they realized Brum was truly dead.
Just a twitch.
Something else. No spine, no twitch.
Poke gestured at the far wall. There were two bloody vertebrae in the corner. The head had been torn away from Brum's already lacerated neck by blunt force. The team searched for the amulet for nearly an hour and couldn't find anything except a clean Waterdavian coin on top of a blood spatter and some bird tracks along the windowsill. It was getting late, so Dave suggested they go back to the plan before they lost sunlight and use the shields to get to Shifty Wick. Wades explained that Quintus had thrown the shields over the cliffside into the Bashew den and then had, quote, coughed up a ghost lady. So, without much discovered, the team left. They strolled back to the tavern and opened the door. Just then, a group of orcs started stomping towards them from the camps. The sky darkened, and it suddenly started snowing.
Get back here.
Hello.
Hey, motherfuckers. You knocked down Quintus and threw our shields into the goddamn canyon. So, as I see it, you owe us a fuckload of money, or we owe you the beating of your goddamn life.
The storm above collapsed, and then a moment later bloomed out twice the size. Now wind was whipping around the canyon in circles, centered around the cave mouth.
We're all on the same side here, and in case you didn't notice, something's going on with the weather.
Wade signaled Poke.
Counterpoint, you're a dumb fucking loser. You took our shields, you owe me money, and I'm gonna... you know what? No, we're gonna fucking kill you.
Wade shot a blink arrow into the Ulrith Nar's shoulder, blinked at him, and gutted him.
That's for Clive.
Bite had already circled the orcs and so took this as a signal. He pounced on another one, slammed his head into the ground, and clamped his teeth around Skull, just as Poke skewered an orc through the eye and pinned his head to the tavern. Skittle shot two bolts into the sky like a drunk cowboy, and Wade's blinkenbelled a second Ulrith Nar,
That's for Jex.
whispering another name from his Damaran unit. The team would be dealing with at least 20 orcs. Dave called out to the tavern for Jim. They barely fended off the first wave when the cart was ready. By that time, the storm above had collapsed down and expanded double the size 2 more times. And with that, the team leapt onto the cart and sped out of town at breakneck pace. The wheels snapping and reforming against the ice, the roof getting pounded with snow. And for about an hour, Jim hit his stride. He was the best damn driver this side of the spine. and he put on a show. Finally, as they rounded the horseshoe through a momentary clearing in the storm, they saw the mouth of the cave. Blood streaked down the cliffs, and Shifty Wick was floating, arms out, eyes blank, held in place by two wraiths. As the Kenku returned to consciousness, a spear was thrust through his chest. His essence spiraled into the sky, and the storm renewed. The figure holding the spear was obscured, but faintly dulled by the wind and snow. They could hear laughter. Big thanks to my wife, Hilletje Moller Bashew, for playing the Wraith, and Peter O. Morgan for playing Wades in Shadows. You can find Pete at VaporLock81 over on Twitch. And finally, big thanks to you for watching. If this is your first Cold Road episode, you can catch up by watching a video that I released earlier this week that contains all of the previous episodes up to now, 1 through 4. This was an absolute motherfucker to make. It took me nearly a month. So if you enjoyed it, please let the algorithm know. And I'll see you probably next week with an animated spellbook, would be my guess. All right.